There have been players who have completed individual levels of Halo blindfolded with a guide, but no one's willing to go out there and try for an entire game run, at least until today. We talked about the fact that nobody had done a full game run blindfolded just yet, not too long ago in a video, and we finally teamed up with the coolest sounding and looking speedrunner we could find, Too Easy. He's a Halo Reach speedrunner, and we decided we would try to go for a full game completed run with guide, where Too Easy would strap himself in, blindfold himself, and I would be the one to try to give him instructions. And oh boy, was this way harder than we thought it would be. Now, for a little bit of context, Too Easy had tried and practiced running around some of the levels blindfolded by himself for a while, and it really doesn't go that well. We expect if anyone's going to do a full blind run, they're gonna have to do so many hours of practice to pull it off and like memorization. So surely a guided run with someone like me giving the instructions can be a walk in the park though, right? Ha ha ha. No, this is what happened. Well, first, this video doesn't have a sponsor, yikes. So instead, we get to choose how we want to try to pay some bills. So, Gamer Subs. They give us a pretty good cut whenever anyone orders with our code. 0 calories, no sugar, but still a caffeine kick. I used to drink soda instead of water as my main go-to drink, and looking back, 1 can of soda is like over 150 calories, and if you drink more than 1 in a day, you're just pretty much drinking extra calories and sugar. The last 2 months, I've really been trying to be more mindful about my health. I completely quit sugar soda now, and I genuinely use Gamer Subs. It tastes good. They have some amazing waifu cups. I tried the guacamole gamer fart by Russian Badger despite the name, and I swear this is like the most refreshing drink that I think I've ever had. It's really just strawberry lime, but I'm finally needing a restock because I've gone through my 100 servings already because of how much I'm drinking this stuff. There's other flavors that are good too, but I'm addicted to this one. So yeah, use Rocket Sloth as your code. Let's just go ahead and start with our first night of attempts because oh boy, was this night very challenging. So first things first, we had to load into the game and kind of figure out the best way to handle playing this game kind of simultaneously while being in different locations. Too Easy lives all the way in New Zealand and I'm way up here in the United States, which is a pretty long distance. There's also things like input lag when I'm giving a command to when Too Easy can actually hear the command and input it, and then there's also a visual lag between Discord's streaming service and what I can actually see. So just kind of an extra layer of difficulty added in than if we were actually in the same room trying this. Winter Contingency started off interestingly. We kind of had to get a feel for how we were going to navigate together, where I would give a command like go forward or sidestep right. We were, of course, early on worried that we would just run straight off of the cliff here, but I did manage to mostly avoid that by giving input. I'll be honest, this is a good example of why doing this with Too Easy was a good call, because Too Easy is a Halo Reach speedrunner and he's at least familiar with a lot of the maps. So kind of when I would explain where we were, he would know like, oh, there's a cliff on my right side. I shouldn't just hold the right walking button and walk off the cliff. I will say for a first level, this early section does have a lot of little twists and turns you have to kind of get around before you can actually get into the level, which was interesting. It was like an early challenge to just get a feel for that. But when we got to the wide open, it was a little bit easier to just run up the hill for a bit. We were trying to communicate like which ways we thought were the best routes to take, though I don't think we were always on the same page, so there was some confusion. It was around this point where we actually had our first death, which was kind of funny, but also, you know, accidental. Go left a little bit. Stop. We ran off the map.
Alright, we found out the latency at least.
Though after that, things were a little bit smoother. We eventually did make our way past the elites, and from there we were able to get into the car, and driving a car blindfolded surprisingly is a little bit challenging. I mean, I was trying. I was doing the best I could to give instructions, but I just felt like sometimes I didn't even know what to say to like fix the situation our vehicle could get into. We definitely did get stuck in the vehicle for a while trying to get it over or through this like riverbed, and eventually Eventually, we ended up just abandoning it altogether, which probably ended up costing us a bit of time. I think this run in general, it's going to be very obvious that besides just navigating, there's going to be some other things that are going to pop up that are going to make completing this way harder than we thought. Even though this is on easy difficulty, we really don't have a whole lot of options if we are in a situation where enemies start shooting at us. Like, I can't just say, oh, duck into cover, because Too Easy doesn't know where the cover is. I'd have to walk him through getting to safety, which already can take multiple seconds, and in that time we can die. We almost ran into a really bad issue when we're at the little base area we had to hold out at before the Falcon comes to pick us up. We were able to hide behind this wall all right for a little bit, and for the most part we just hoped that Noble Team would take out the rest of the enemies. They did an okay job, though we did try to help out at the end, and the results were mixed. Getting inside of the Falcon that's parked there waiting for us was hilariously a long task to actually do, and then we flew across the level, flying to the back section of the level. This part wasn't actually that bad. I just had to navigate Too Easy inside of the area and in the corner where he would be mostly safe, and let Noble Team take out the rest of the enemies, which worked out well. And then in this final stretch, we hopefully just counted on George to take out the enemies. We did try to communicate how to actually shoot and fight some of the enemies, and it was hit or miss. Sometimes we tried to punch enemies, sometimes we tried to shoot enemies, and the results were varied. Now, there are two really scary boys that you have to fight at the end of this level, and honestly, I thought this part would take way longer and be way more challenging, but we actually were really in sync with this one, communicating, figuring out how we wanted to take the enemies out, and we actually did manage to kill the elites. And though I thought this part would be harder than it actually ended up being, you'll be surprised because levels that you think would be easier end up being way harder later on in this run. Nonetheless, we're moving on to Sword Base. And I was a little worried about how we were even going to manage this part. We had a couple of different ideas. We thought maybe we would just kill the enemies, but we didn't think that that would be the most time efficient way of doing things. So instead we pushed down around these enemies the best that we could, quickly trying to get inside of this covered area. Yeah, we were getting shot at a lot. It definitely wasn't the safest route, but it was being somewhat effective. We slowly wobbled over to where the target designator was, and then turned around and tried to shoot at the enemies the best that we could. It wasn't really the most effective way, and we definitely had a very close call where we almost died, which would have kind of set us back a little bit. There was this angry ghost that really wanted to try to kill Too Easy every chance that it got. Nonetheless, we decided to just run down the right side, avoiding as much as we could, making our way down to the later part of this route. Now, this was a little bit interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's enemies everywhere. There's this building we're supposed to get up to the top and press a button on, and we quickly learned that with this strategy of being blindfolded, finding where exactly the button is a lot harder than maybe it looks. Like, we have to kind of line things up and try to aim for the button. It's really dumb.
Look left, left, a little more, a little to your right, and that's where the button should be if you go straight. Okay, stop. You're at the button. Look down, step left, look up. There's like a gun and stuff in the way. Okay, step to your right, a couple steps. Side step to your right. Okay, step forward, hold E. I think we got it. Okay.
Just recalling what happened in this next area is difficult to do because it was very challenging and a little bit tedious. Trying to get inside this first door to press the button just seemed like this impossibly hard task for a while, and I think it was just a little bit difficult to communicate with the latency how to do something precise. Also, in Too Easy's situation, when I say sidestep right or sidestep left, he doesn't really know how far left or right he's walking, so sometimes a sidestep command will turn into like a side marathon or sprint or something, and we go way too far. Then we have to reline it up and recalibrate. It actually, honestly, was not as straightforward at times as this might look. After we hit the first button, we had to manage to navigate up these stairs all the way up around this building to try to get the other button, and it's so heartbreaking when you fall down. Fortunately, we did get some checkpoints along the way, so last checkpoint did come in handy at times. And then we thought, hey, instead of just trying to navigate the rest of this area, why don't we take a Warthog and just have like a Marine drive us? Well, when it comes to available driving Marines in the area, we have one person who actually can drive the Warthog, and it's Cat. Surely this will be purely perfect. Well, as it turns out, Cat just didn't want to get in the Warthog. I don't know what was going on. It took us forever to finally get Kat to come up to drive us to the next area. But eventually she did, and the driving honestly was surprisingly not the worst. I mean, it wasn't good, but it wasn't the worst thing ever. So we took the Warthog and continued pretty much all the way up to the door where we go back into Sword Base. So this part wasn't the worst. A little bit sketchy at times, but nothing terribly bad. Going inside, things get a little bit more interesting when we have 2 hunters that we're supposed to kill, and this is kind of not the easiest thing in the world.
With your thing, like if you can zoom and then look up. Okay, let's look up a little bit. Let's start sidestepping right. Look slightly right. Look slightly left. Shoot. Good shot. Shoot again. Oh, never mind. Sidestep right. Shoot. We got it. We got one of them.
So at first things were going somewhat okay with this terrifying battle against hunters, and then all of a sudden this happened and I didn't even know what it was.
So it's kind of on the left of a box that you're on, so you're gonna have to turn left. What killed you?
I got splattered to death. The hunter.
Yeah, a box killed you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, apparently a Marine goes into a like protected animation where he's ducking behind cover, and in this instance, if that happens, it will just force the player wherever to get out of the way, and in this case it just splattered us. So we were back to trying to take out the hunters. Now I do have to say I was really proud of us because these lineups on the hunters were incredible. The fact that we were able to even shoot the hunters were really cool, and then on the second hunter, Too Easy had to do some jump shots, and he was dodging some of the shots by like just hearing the hunters shooting at him, which also was really cool, and we're able to kill the 2 hunters. Navigating up the ramps at the next part of this level was challenging enough, but it wasn't the worst thing ever. We were doing okay, and when we got to the final part with Emil, where we're supposed to help him take out the enemies, we struggled with this. We wanted to help. We were trying to shoot at some of the enemies. I think we shot at 1 or 2 enemies, but eventually we spent so long in this part, there's a soft lock timer that essentially despawns the enemies and just ends the level because the game's scared that the game is stuck for some reason. So, hey, we didn't have to fully help all the way, but we did get past Sword Base and we were moving on to Nightfall. I will be honest, Nightfall surprisingly was the shortest level in this entire run. It still took us a while, but it was shorter than what it could have been compared to some of these other levels, because later on in this run, these levels start to get very intense. Early on, there was definitely some confusion. We were trying to wander around this first area and go straight to where we're supposed to go. Too Easy had this idea of doing this jump that he does in speedruns to save some time. Doing the jump and lining it up wasn't very easy, and we definitely did not make the jump. So from there, it was me trying to figure out where we were supposed to go because I couldn't remember exactly the route to go up into the next area. So we walked around a bit and eventually found where we needed to go, and we had to communicate to make sure we were on the same page to figure out where we actually were. I think there were times where Too Easy thought we were somewhere else than where we actually were because I was explaining things badly, but we were able to navigate this area. We walked ahead a bit, we were doing good. We somehow turned around and walked back the way we came, so that wasn't good. But after getting reoriented, we mostly avoided as many enemies. Also, when we were at this ledge here, we decided the best way to progress would be to try to land a grenade jump, and after a little bit of precision and planning it out, we did manage to pull it off, so that was kind of cool. Then we got to this part where we're supposed to take out these enemies. At first we thought, hey, we'll just make a run for the forklift, do the forklift glitch, clip to the wall, and skip this whole area. We got wrecked immediately by the Covenant because we just went loud and they knew we were there, so that wasn't the way to do it. So the next time around, we're like, hey, we'll just be super stealthy. We'll sneak up on this elite, we'll kill him, and it'll go perfectly. And then this kind of happened.
Then go punch him.
That it?
Go. Yeah, go forward and just go forward and punch. Oh, he moved. Okay, we're across the bridge. He's behind us right now.
He doesn't see us? Oh my god.
No, I don't know.
Wait,
Turn
okay,
around.
let's kill him, motherfucker. Where is he?
Look behind you. Keep turning. Okay, I think he saw us.
Okay, we just murder everything.
I don't know what just happened. We just evaded them somehow.
So we just kind of took it with stride and figured out what to do. We did make our way up to the forklift and we went for the lineup, and we sat there for a minute discussing what the lineup needed to look like for it to work, because we both are familiar with this trick. And while we were trying to discuss what it should look like, I kind of thought, you know, this looks good enough. Why don't we just try it first and see what happens? And sure enough, first attempt, we actually got the forklift clip off. I was very impressed that we managed to do that on the very first try. Usually this takes a couple of lineups for just a regular regular playthrough when we try it, so we did pretty good getting it the first try. From there, we just ran to the end, dodging all of the enemies, and this was the only level we completed in like under 40 minutes. So we were happy about that, but then we had to go to Tip of the Spear next, and oh boy. Okay, so next up was Tip of the Spear, and this level was a mess. There's so many different things going on in different parts of this level, it gets really confusing. Right away, it was just a disaster, us getting shot at by all these shade turrets and all these enemies. There's no way we can just walk in here and kill these things easily without having to have some amazing skill or something like that. We ended up trying to run forward to get away from things and then angle the shots that we could to try to take out the shade turrets. It was a bit of a mess. It took a lot of trial and error just trying to line up shots and also trying to prevent dying as often as possible, but we did need to clear through this section if we wanted to get the warthog, which eventually we were able to kill enough enemies, and we did in fact get a warthog, which did make the next part of the level a little bit easier. I mean, it's another one of those great levels where we get to rely on Cat's driving, and it was, well, you know. We took out the first tower from afar, which took a little while, but it wasn't too bad. Then we drove around a bit until Cat just abandoned us and we had to go back on foot. Walking through this next section wasn't surprisingly as bad as you think it would be. There was a couple of moments where we kind of lost some progress and had to go back up some steps, but for the most part, this section wasn't the worst. But when we got to the second giant AA gun, this part was a bit rough. We were trying to find a vehicle or something we could use to shoot at the AA gun from long range to avoid getting in close quarters and dying, and we tried to pull off this really impressive jump. Now, the jump almost worked, leaping across to the next thing, but we forgot we didn't have sprint with us, so we kind of choked the whole thing, and the lineup process just seemed a little bit too weird. There was this ghost that was also just trying to mess with us the whole time, which was kind of annoying, and we would hijack the ghost and then he would hijack us back. It was a whole ordeal, but eventually we did get to the point where we could finally take out this giant AA gun, so that was surprisingly alright. The next section was a little weird. We're on this on-rail shooter part. We thought we would have to shoot enemies to survive, but fortunately enough, you actually don't have to kill anything. You just kind of pop some shots down there and hope that nothing kills you, and fortunately enough, we were able to clear this. After the Falcon crashes, it was a little weird trying to figure out which way we wanted to go and approach this next area at. We eventually just kind of went for it and sprinted to the elevator, and that was not that bad. The elevator part, though, was a whole different story. In this section, there are a lot of enemies. They start shooting at you the second you get up there, pretty much, and you don't have a whole lot of time to try to aim line up shots. This is actually one of the instances where I felt like de-scoping was really offensive here, because you're trying to line up a shot for a really long time, you're angling it, you're talking through it, and then you get hit by like a random plasma pistol shot, and then your aim gets messed up and you can't do the same shot. That's a bit frustrating. Also, the enemies here are really strong because there's an engineer giving them extra power, and we would try to push up just a bit, and that would result in like an elite pushing us and us dying. Eventually, we just had to kind of get a run in where we weren't dying, and we were taking out grunts and then trying to like Ferrari peek some enemies or try to bait an enemy. We did manage to actually survive this after quite a bit of time being stuck here, but yeah, this was probably one of the first instances where like the enemies were extra difficult to fight here, but nonetheless, we did clear out the room, we hit the button, and we were able to trigger the cutscene. All right, so now we go into Long Night of Solace. This is a lengthy level, and I wasn't looking forward to it beforehand, and this level definitely was probably one of the harder ones. Let me try to explain this. Early on, the beach part, not the worst. It's a little bit chaotic. You can kind of stay in the water and avoid some of the enemies, and we could kind of fight the best we could. There's a lot going on, but it's not terrible. Even the indoor section wasn't hard. Now, it seemed like 2easy already had a strategy where he wanted certain guns, so it was a little hard to get some of the lineups to make sure that 2easy had the right weapons he wanted for the indoor section of the level later on, and we did have to try to walk our way up to the saber without falling. But now we're in this giant open space area, and apparently we're supposed to communicate together to try to do this entire space battle, and this wasn't something that would be really realistic. There are a ton of ships flying around really quickly, and even if I tried to tell 2easy left or right or up or down, there's a delay. The enemy ships move so quickly that they could be changing directions by the time that 2easy even hears me, and this was probably the part that I was most worried about for the run. Fortunately, 2easy, being familiar with speedrunning, knows that there is technically a way you can bypass in in this first section, and it's essentially you have to kind of just wait for a long time. Now, with this method, we will have to try to find a way to stop our vehicle from flying so we don't accidentally get shot at and killed later on and put us in the kind of a safer spot. So we did have to navigate and talk about how we were going to stop our saber from moving and kind of land it somewhere. We kind of just parked it up against the savannah and just hoped for the best. We had to make sure we were wedged in quite well, and I think I did the best I could with this lineup. Too Easy didn't really know what he was lined up with, so it was up to me to decide if it would work, and I think it worked out pretty well. Then we had to sit there and wait for the enemy fighters to be destroyed by the team fighters. Surely this wouldn't take too long, right? We were sitting there for like an hour just waiting for the enemies to tediously pick off the enemies. Also, with the level taking this long, it seems like our checkpoints would bug out and we weren't getting checkpoints regularly, which meant if we died now, the stakes were higher than ever because we would have to reset even more. There's the part where the phantoms roll up, and that was really stressful. We tried to hide in a way that would optimize this, and it seemed like the enemies were being picked off, but occasionally it also seemed like there was just some that wouldn't die. So we did try to break out and steer and shoot a little bit, and we did manage to kill a couple of things. So if you wanted to see some high intensity blind saber flying, here we go. There's also the part where you have to take out the engines of the ship, and this was terrifying because I have to not only line up these shots, but I'm also kind of on a really tight timer so we don't crash. There was one moment that was way too close for comfort.
I don't know if we can hit this engine at this angle. We might have to come in at a different angle. Roll right.
Oh, that's not right.
Go down. Just go straight down. Straight down. No, he's
I did.
down. No, we're good, we're good.
We just won't let Too Easy know how close that actually was. Eventually, though, we did manage to take out the engines, and we finally were able to end this outer space part after what seemed like an eternity. But the level's not over then yet either. The level continues on and has this whole indoor part, which was really hard too, because firstly, there's no gravity in this first area. There's an elite that jumps up and he'll just kill you, and no matter how we tried to do the lineup, we couldn't kill him back. We have to kill all the enemies in the area, most of them, to get the game to progress. So it seemed like he was an easy enemy to go for, so we kept reverting, but we couldn't get him, and then we would fall down, and then we're all disoriented, and the sound's all muffled, so it's even harder for Too Easy to figure out where the enemies are. And these enemies just move really quickly. It seems like the elites are constantly bobbing and weaving out of the way, making just punching them even a lot harder than on some of the earlier levels. It just felt like this part was a bit worse. Eventually, we did push up into the next area, and essentially it just became this repeat pattern of, look, we're in this big open room, look at all the enemies. We're gonna have to kill them and not die, and they move way too quickly, and hitting them is gonna be really difficult. So it was a lot of shooting, hitting an enemy a couple of times before they moved out of the way and moved out of sight, and then we couldn't kill them. And I think that got real tedious, especially if you're a viewer watching this on Twitch and you're just like watching us try to even kill a single enemy, almost getting the enemy, and then it running off and us not getting the kill. It was something else. Eventually, a mix of us and our amazing fighting skills and our marine allies would clear the area, and we would be able to move up. Nonetheless, we pushed forward and cleared out these areas as painstakingly as it was, and we were eventually able to make it to the final room where things were fighting their way through. It seemed like we would need to come up with some cool strategies if we were going to ever get past this room, but every time we were about to do something really cool, our allies would just kill the last enemy, and we were like, yeah, we totally did it. This level ended up taking us nearly 3 hours to beat. Well, after that level was finally cleared, surely Exodus will be a walk in the park, right? Actually, going into this, I thought Exodus would be one of the easiest levels across this entire thing. I was very wrong. I don't even know where to start with this level. There's just a lot of little challenges that you wouldn't think would be terrible that end up being terrible, like navigating these hallways. There's grunts exploders running at you, and we managed to have a good strategy to get through it, but it gets really chaotic. We turn this corner, we're in this big area, and just navigating around while also having to be careful was just really difficult to like talk and explain each step along the way. There was a part where we were doing good and then we just fell off the map because we jumped in this little area, so it's back to last checkpoint and we have to go redo what we just did, and it's just not really the most great fun experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, when you're playing with a friend in any game, it's a good time, but this was definitely a tedious thing to be doing while also having a good time. The outside area wasn't as bad, but when we got to the section where we're supposed to push across to the elevator, this is where we got stuck for a really long time. There's a lot of enemies flying around. We're trying to play it safe. We're trying to hang back and pick off the enemies, but they keep shooting us and de-scoping us, so we're having a really hard time shooting the enemies. We do have some weapons around, like like a sniper rifle, which could come in handy, though lining up a sniper rifle and then saying shoot when the brute stands still is really hard to actually hit the shot because the brute will move after a couple of seconds. Fortunately, we were streaming, so we also had the input of chat who could help us out, and Jangoose, one of the greatest retired Halo speedrunners of all time, just happened to be in our chat at that very moment, and he made the excellent suggestion that if we give a sniper rifle to a Marine, he could cover us while we went and pushed forward. So we spent all of this time trying to get this Marine to take the sniper rifle and trying to walk up to a Marine so they would take the gun. This was like a whole challenge in itself, just trying to get a Marine to take the gun from our hands. Eventually he did take the sniper rifle, so we were like, okay, now let's push up. We'll have some other Marines push up with us, and we'll have this Marine with a sniper rifle covering us. We make our push, we get up to the brutes, and we get headshotted by the Marine. Yeah. Okay, so that was great. Eventually we would just try again and just try to do our best to kill everything. It wasn't the easiest, but we did manage to eventually have our Marines take out enough of the enemies where we were able to move up. We had to do this holdout section where there's like brutes rushing at us. It was kind of terrifying. We tried to line up some grenades. We had to go 1-to-1, toe-to-toe with a brute that had a hammer, and that was scary. We took the hammer though, which was kind of fun. Eventually we did manage to survive this area without too much going wrong. We went into the elevator, had this nice, enjoyable, peaceful elevator ride, and then we get to the outside part where it's like, hey, yeah, just go ahead and jetpack. This is probably one of the parts where you think it would get really hard, but surprisingly enough, 2Easy and I got really good at communicating on how to do the jetpack and like how long to jetpack lunge. I mean, there was a little bit of a learning period, but for the most part, like we were really good at like estimating how much jetpack we would need. I was proud of this little platforming section. We flew across this pretty well, taking some pretty risky jumps and even landing them. And then we got to this longer stretch where it was a little bit of a mess and we didn't really do it too well and we ended up dying and having to revert. But after a couple of tries, we did get better at it, only getting to the enemies that we had to fight and avoiding the rest. We got into the little turnaround building where we have to fly up and kind of turn around, and that went okay-ish. It was this next area where things were a lot rougher because we have to get into this building, clear it out so that the Falcons will eventually come and pick us up. But to get to the building, you have to fly like across a courtyard and then turn around and fly back. And we had this really cool strategy plan, but we weren't really communicating on where we were correctly, so we were a little confused. First, we tried to give some Marines some weapons, and this was a long ordeal of it just not working. Apparently, if the Marine is in an animation crouched behind cover, they won't take the weapon. So we spent a lot of time trying to give these Marines weapons. We couldn't. Then we had to do this like jetpack thing, and 2Easy thought that I was 6 feet over to the right when we really were over to the left when we were communicating what we were looking at, and we ended up not being able to make the jump we wanted to make. There was this really cool jump we tried to make where we had to jump, fly, then do a backwards jump and fly up a little bit more, and it almost worked, but it didn't work so terribly that we just never tried that again and we went a different way. Once we did finally make it up, we got a checkpoint, which was a huge relief, and we had to fight through this area. It was a mess. It wasn't really easy to just pick off the enemies, and there's just a lot going on. We did eventually just jump into the thick of it, and it made it a little bit easier, but at this point the enemies are moving so fast. Even if I tried to give 2Easy instructions on how to line up a shot or go after a melee, every time we would just get sidestepped, the enemy would get behind us, and we would be more disoriented than we were before. Once we did get past this section by punching our way the best we could through stuff and lobbing grenades, we ended up taking a Falcon to the end section of the level, and we thought this would also be not the worst, but it ended up being really, really hard. So you have to go and hit the 2 buttons and then hit the 3rd button that's inside the building. I was actually pretty proud of us. The first 2 buttons, really easy to get. That last button, nearly impossible to get. We made a run for it. We went past these enemies, went into the hallway, got inside the room where the button was. Then we just had to reach across the table and hit the button, but we were too far from the button, so we had to try to get relocated and looking at the button, and there's an enemy shooting at us, and we're just trying to hit the button to end of the level, because if we have to stop to fight the enemy, it'll take too long and the enemy will probably kill us, so we're just trying to press the button, but we also can't get the lineup for the button right, and we end up dying. So we try it again. This time we go a different way, and it goes even worse. There's just enemies everywhere. We try to go this other way where apparently there are no enemies, but there were a ton of enemies there, and we got killed there. Then we tried going this way, and we ended up dying as well. Then we were going to try the first strategy again, but differently, and somehow we managed to do this like trick jetpack maneuver and land inside the window.
Oh wait, we're in the room. Go straight. Just go straight. Look to your right. Stop. Turn around completely. Stop. Go straight. Walk straight and hold E. Look to your right. Look slightly right. Hold E, look up, and hold E. You got it.
And I don't know how we managed to do this because hypothetically we talked about this and we both agreed that there'd be no way I'd be able to explain the jetpacking distance and aim and precision for us to land and crouch and get inside. But it just worked out. We ended up landing in there and still we had a very close call with this brute about to kill us when we managed to press the button and finally get past this level as well. Oh my gosh, this level was also really rough, taking almost 2 hours to complete on easy. Now the bad thing is New Alexandria is the next level and we were dreading it. We knew this level would not be easy. There's just so much that can go wrong, so much that can happen, and it's another flying level. So giddy up. We ended up taking off in the Falcon, and you know what? This part wasn't actually that bad. Giving directions on steering the Falcon wasn't hard. It was like, hey, line it up, keep going right, keep going right, a little more right. Okay, too far, a little to the left, and now go straight. And then like, that's just kind of how it worked. And we would go straight, we would go to the objective. Then landing took a little bit of communication, and kind of we had to overcome some difficulties figuring out how to steer this thing, but we were able to make it through nonetheless. The hospital was first, which was pretty difficult of the 3 buildings. Navigating down the spiral staircase was hard, but we eventually went the route where we can pick up this bubble shield, which ended up coming in handy in a lot of different situations, as the drop shield will regenerate your health. So it kind of gave us a little bit of a reason to avoid and just skip enemies, because we could count on that drop shield to heal us up if we did end up taking damage. And boy, oh boy, did this thing save our butt when we were in the inside glass area where you have to kind of run across the little courtyard to get to the jammer. On the way back, the enemies won't despawn, but more enemies will spawn in, and it gets really, really nasty. But because we had that drop shield, we were able to regenerate our health regularly enough, and with some well-timed maneuvers and some really close calls, we did manage to clear our way back out of the building, going around all the stairs and finally getting to the top and getting out of there. And I was happy to get the heck out of there. We were able to go to the Club Herrera, and also I'm kind of skipping over the little in-between objectives you have on this level. They're really straightforward. We just went to a building and let the Marines shoot at everything, and it was fine. Club Herrera, we had one really close call, I'll be honest. Getting in and out, not the worst thing, but this hunter literally came seconds, maybe milliseconds away from completely murdering us, but we managed to survive. So yeah, good job. Okay, Synoviet Center also wasn't that bad. We did the speed running trick to land the Falcon underneath and over so we didn't have to walk as far and we could avoid some enemies, except I didn't really know the exact lineup for the speed running trick, even though I said I did. I didn't, and it took way longer to land the Falcon correctly and also get the Falcon out of there later on. But yeah, this one wasn't too bad. It was just a quick elevator ride. We got a little lost when we were up in the reflection building. We just weren't on the same page where we were, but we eventually did navigate our way to the jammer, and we just made a run for the elevator and got out of there. Okay, so we finally were able to get out of that. We had to fly to the end of the level, shoot down these shade turrets. Wasn't too bad, just flew in a circle. We were able to clear this level. It actually wasn't overall the worst level. It was manageable, and that was kind of nice. The package. First step, run past enemies and hope for the best. The second step, try to get too easy to get in this Revenant. Now, fortunately, this time around, Luke had returned from a trip, so he was able to join me in giving these callouts to Too Easy, which definitely helped out a bit. We used the Revenant to try to line up with the AA gun here to take it out, but we were way too far away, thinking we could do some crazy lob shot and hit it. Yeah, that wasn't happening. You actually have to get pretty close to shoot the AA gun with the Revenant shot, and the Revenant shot like drops its aim every time, so Too Easy would have to reset the aim each shot, but we would have to tell him how to reset the aim, and that caused some confusion. It wasn't really the best way to do it. We definitely could have managed that a little better, but we did manage to take it out, so that was cool. Then we had to drive to the front of the sword base building, and this was where things were weird because we went partially on foot, and then we were trying to get hidden behind some rock that Too Easy told us was the speedrunner's rock, but I didn't know which rock he was talking about, and we were all trying to figure out the rock. Meanwhile, we were dying and getting shot at. We eventually just had Too Easy go hide behind some rocks. They weren't the right rocks, so then we had to go look around for these right rocks. Eventually though, when we did find the rocks he was talking about, it was a little bit easier to stay alive here. We weren't getting murdered instantly like we had been before. After this area, the door opens and you can run inside. It's a little hectic. You have to go up this spiral staircase and there's these enemies here. And then once you do all of that, we get into the sword base area. There's a lot of big boy enemies that are terrifying. Too Easy just like sprinted at them like he could see, but he couldn't. And then we almost died, but fortunately we had Noble Team with us and they helped us keep us alive. Then we had a fun little elevator ride and we got ready for the firefight of our life, which actually wasn't that bad of a firefight. Essentially, we just ran around and turned on all of the turrets and they did majority of the work. I mean, we tried to help out and shoot at stuff. It just didn't seem very effective. And by the time we were thinking about ways to be more effective, all the enemies had died. Yeah, easy difficulty with those guns on aren't the worst thing in the world. So with that, the package was cleared and we were heading on to the final level, Pillar of Autumn. And I will tell you this, the Pillar of Autumn ended up being way harder than we thought it would be. Things start off calm and docile. We even tried to have Too Easy jump and do the If You Came to Hear Me Beg achievement where you assassinate an elite to break your fall. It didn't work. So we eventually led him down the cliffside safely and we just kind of made a sprint forward to where the mongoose was. And fortunately enough, Emil will drive the Noble 6 player wherever he needs to go. So Emil took the wheel instead and we got to sit back for a minute. We drove around, some crazy stuff going on, but nothing that would stop us. When we get to the part of the bridge, Emil just pops this ollie and we make it across, which was cool. And then it's up to us to navigate ahead. We just ran past all the enemies, making it to the caves and triggering the cutscene. After Carter oofs himself, it's up to us to continue on the journey. We keep up running around and things start to get a lot more chaotic in this big open area. We run up across the boneyard area and Too Easy says that we have to take the upper route because the enemies down below are going to be too hard. So we had to navigate up these stairs, which was difficult enough because it was like at a 180-degree turn and then we'd have to turn again. But we eventually did make it up the stairs and walk across to the upper platform, and then we walked around, dropped down, and we dropped into the room where all the enemies were and the elite door was open. We ran inside and continued up to the next section where we would inevitably get stuck for quite some time because these hunters are not nice. These hunters are very aggressive, they block the way, and you have to kind of navigate around them while also trying to figure out what to do. Now you can break through this glass and get to the next area safely, but in order to break through the glass, Too Easy has to know where he's going, and we were hiding behind some boxes for our dear life. Those hunters were angry, and every time it seemed like we stepped out to try to do anything else, we would just get shredded by either the hunters or the skirmishers that were nearby. It seems like skirmishers move too quickly to try to just pop off and get them out of the picture, so we really had to kind of focus in on just getting the navigation down as fast as possible. We had a couple of strategies we tried, like running to this corner, getting behind the wedges of these two boxes, but neither of those really seemed to work too well. What did work was running for our dear life, and eventually I was able to quickly give enough input commands so that Too Easy was able to make this crouch jump inside of the window and getting away from these hunter things.
Start walking straight, look right, go straight, look left, go straight, side step right, keep going, back up a little bit and go side step right. Okay, go straight, side step right. Okay, so we're all the way in the far right corner. Okay.
I just need to look.
Right there.
Go.
Yeah.
Alright, let's just go back and touch the door. The closed door.
This was awful. We died a lot. Then after all of that, Luke gave Too Easy a quick heart attack.
You just restarted the level? No, I'm just kidding.
Dude!
We can walk forward.
You just killed me.
Nothing really compared in difficulty to that fight through the rest of this main navigation section. We walked through pretty much all these corridors and it wasn't that bad. But this final firefight was also pretty difficult. There's a lot of enemies that are really strong and you have to kill quite a few enemies to trigger the sequences that cause the end of the level to move forward. Now, trying to actually kill the enemies was really difficult once again. Lineups were slow. There's a lot of enemies in the area, so a lot of options, and also you have to worry about just being flanked and killed. With that, we tried our best to fight where we could. Wave after wave would slowly move by, even though we were limited on what grenades we had. And finally, we get the wave where we drop off Cortana, and Emil ends up taking a nap. So it's up to us to save the day, and we got stuck here. Yeah, these elites inside are really powerful. They just run in and sweep the room if they need to. So after dying to these elites multiple times, we decided just to make a mad dash for it, and we actually managed to make it all the way up, killing some of the enemies on the way in and avoiding the rest that were down below. And then we pushed up the stairs to where the gun was. We tried to keep the area as safe as possible and only jump into the gun at a time where we needed to. We finally were in the gun. We were being shot at. Things were going crazy. It was very intense. We lined up the shot and I said left, just like a hair to the left, and we went way too far to the left, and we ended up killing the run here and dying. So we get to go to the last checkpoint, and that's fun. So we had to redo going up the stairs again, dodging the elites, climbing up the ladder, and getting in position on the map shotgun once again. This time we waited a little bit until the gun was ready to shoot the thing, which we ended up waiting for, and once and for all, we were able to beat this level, thus clearing the Pillar of Autumn.
Shoot.
Yeah, shoot.
That's it.
We did it.
We got it.
Oh,
Good shit, boys. Good. Well played.
we still have one more level to go.
Oh yeah, we gotta beat Lone Wolf.
Yeah, it doesn't count if you'll be alone, dude.
It was really hype after how challenging this entire thing had been to finally reach the end. All in all, it took us well over 10 hours on easy difficulty just to talk through the actual gameplay and bring 2 Easy to the final section of that last level. 2 Easy did a great job as well playing with only sound, and I think that was really cool. On Lone Wolf, we just threw a grenade at our feet and beat that level real quick. That was easy. And thus, this makes 2 Easy the first player to blindfold play an entire Halo game solo beginning to end. However, I do want to mention another interesting thing about this category of running. There is actually a pretty large community of video game players out there who naturally play without sight or without a blindfold because, well, they have no sight. And while we did manage to help someone complete a blindfolded run, which is really awesome and a really cool achievement we're proud of, we wanted to note that we did kind of in a way get this idea for a run like this from a friend of ours, SightlessKombat, who, as someone who has no sight, has played through the Halo games and various other games through co-op experiences, through teaming up with buddies and fighting their way through the game. Actually, way back before Halo Infinite came out, we played this really amazing custom game in Halo 5. And if you remember back in Halo 5, there was a variant of the assault rifle that would make like a target indicator sound effect every time your reticle was hovering over another player. And with that concept in mind, Medusa is a map that has 4 corners to it and a couple of different lanes and different sound effects in each corner so you can figure out where in the map you are. And then all players are intended to turn their television off and play only with sound, and also only using the movement stick. There's no like aiming allowed. Then you pair that with the fact you also have a gravity hammer and you're only listening for the footsteps of enemies and also the sound of each indicator that's around the map. And it's a really unique multiplayer game that hopefully will be recreated in Halo Infinite sometime soon. We ended up getting to play this with SightlessKombat and Spartan Blood 1, who helped out on the Forge team who made this map, and we all got destroyed by SightlessKombat. Now, Sightless is always advocating for more accessibility features in games, which we think is really cool, over on his YouTube channel and on his Twitch streams. He even helped work on the hashtag Transcribing Games community project, which aims to audio describe video game footage for other gamers without sight, which is really awesome. This is kind of what it looks like.
The Marines move closer to the object, now seen to be the Master Chief lying in the impact crater. They take up combat positions with one Marine sitting down beside the armoured figure and pulling out a small computer.
We'll have his YouTube channel in the description down below, so if you guys are interested in supporting him, you can check him out as well. Now, with our Halo Reach journey finished with this blindfolded challenge, the real question comes up to who will be the first player to solo complete a Halo game with a blindfold on. There's been players who've completed individual levels before, but never an entire game run. It doesn't have to be in one sitting, but if they do it, you know, like in segments over the course of a shortish amount of time, I think that would be equally as impressive. So if you're out there thinking about it, definitely give it a shot. Make sure you stream it too. Maybe we'll stop by and watch to see how the progress goes, and if you pull it off, maybe that's a cool video we can work on as a collective. Also, if you're curious about some of the ins and outs of our blindfolded run with 2 Easy, make sure you go check out his YouTube channel. He uploaded the entire VOD there, like we said, and follow him on Twitch. He's such a friendly person. He streams his speed runs of Halo Reach, and he's like the fastest thing ever. So make sure you do go follow him on Twitch, and specifically go and annoy him in the chat and tell him Rocket Sloth sent you, or sent you. Okay. Thanks so much to our patrons for supporting our channel. You guys have been amazingly awesome since the time that we launched our Patreon. If you're new and you want to support our channel financially, throw a couple bucks our way maybe. Check out our Patreon in the description down below, and maybe you can have your name listed amongst these total legends who've supported our channel. All right, we'll see you guys next time with a new video.